Sir, you need to come with me right now. You're not supposed to be in this area. I'm supposed to be exactly here. I've had 3 reports about an unauthorized individual in the faculty staging area.
I have a program in my hand with my name on it.
Names on programs don't mean access to restricted zones. Turn and walk. Turn around, or I will cuff you in front of every person on this field.
I want you to listen to me very carefully.
Sir, you need to come with me. In approximately 17 minutes, the president of this university is going to hand me a Doctorate of Law degree at that podium. And after that, every camera in the stadium is going to capture what you just did on the worst possible day you will ever have in law enforcement.
That is Mr. Cole. He is our honorary degree recipient.
Officer Paul Greer, badge number 6614, had been contracted through the Lakewood University Event Security Division for 4 years under a rotating vendor agreement that placed off-duty and contracted officers at major campus events. In those 4 years, he had accumulated 11 formal complaints, 8 filed by Black faculty, staff, administrators, and invited guests at university events, all describing the same behavior: removal from designated areas without credential verification, challenges to stated roles and affiliations, and a particular pattern of treating Black individuals in formal attire as more suspicious than Black individuals in casual attire, as though the suit itself required an explanation. Every complaint had been submitted to the university's vendor relations office. Every complaint had been acknowledged. Not one had resulted in the officer's removal from the event rotation, a contract review, or any communication to Greer that his documented pattern had been noted and would be monitored. The university's vendor relations office had been filing the complaints in a folder it had never been required to open twice. On the morning of May 18th, at 10:07 a.m., Greer was patrolling the faculty staging area behind Lakewood University's Harrington Stadium, where 4,200 graduating students, their families, and 23 distinguished guests were gathered for the institution's 147th commencement ceremony. He observed a Black man in a doctoral robe standing near the faculty credential tables reviewing a printed program. The man was not creating a disturbance. He was not attempting to access any restricted equipment or areas. He was standing in a zone that his doctoral regalia and printed credentials clearly authorized him to occupy, reading a printed program. Greer did not check the credential table 2 feet away. He did not verify the regalia, the specific deep blue and gold colors of Lakewood University's doctoral dress, issued only by the registrar's office for authorized degree recipients and honorary doctorate honorees. He did not cross-reference the face against the printed program the man was holding, which contained a full-color photograph of its subject. He made his approach with the confidence of a person who had spent 4 years applying one standard and had never once been corrected for it. What Paul Greer did not know was that the man in the doctoral robe was Marcus Emmanuel Cole, civil rights attorney, former NAACP Legal Defense Fund director, recipient of the American Bar Association's highest pro bono honor, and the scheduled honorary degree recipient at that morning's commencement, whose name appeared on the cover of the program Greer had walked past at the entrance without reading, and that the credential table he had ignored contained 3 separate documents authorizing Marcus's presence in that staging area, including one signed by the university president, and that the commencement, being live-streamed to 31,000 simultaneous viewers, had 2 broadcast cameras positioned with direct sight lines to the faculty staging area, both of which were running, and that one of those cameras had been focused on Marcus for the last 6 minutes because the broadcast director had been documenting the honorary recipient's pre-ceremony preparation as part of a planned feature segment. Greer's decision to arrest a man who was 17 minutes from receiving a Doctorate of Law at the podium behind him would be watched by 31,000 people in real time, clipped and shared 19 million times within a week, and would produce the most consequential reform of university event security vendor contracting in the state's history. Before we go any further, drop where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe a man who spent 30 years fighting for civil rights in courtrooms should be able to stand in a cap and gown at his own honorary ceremony without being handcuffed in a staging area for not looking like he belonged there, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened at Harrington Stadium on May 18th was not a security mistake. It was a security system that had been allowed to make the same mistake 11 times without consequence. Marcus Cole had been awake since 5:30 a.m., not from nerves. He was 63 years old and had been in enough courtrooms hearing rooms, congressional testimony sessions, and hostile depositions to have lost most of the social anxiety that afflicts people who have not yet learned that preparation makes presence inevitable. He had been awake because the morning felt significant in a way that he had decided deserved to be met with attention rather than sleep. The honorary doctorate had been announced in February. He had received the letter in his Chicago office on a Tuesday afternoon, read it twice, set it down, and looked out his window for several minutes before calling his wife. He had told her calmly. She had not been calm. She had cried, which was not something she did often, which told him everything about what the recognition meant in a context beyond his own career. He had spent 30 years as a civil rights attorney, 30 years in which the law had been his instrument, his obsession, and his adversary simultaneously, the thing he loved for what it could do and fought for what it refused to do without being forced. He had graduated from Howard Law at 26, joined the NAACP Legal Defense Fund at 27, and spent the next 14 years litigating voting rights cases in 5 states. He had argued before the Supreme Court twice. He had won one and lost one, and the one he had lost had produced a dissent that was cited in subsequent rulings often enough that legal scholars had told him the loss had ultimately mattered more than many victories. He had left the LDF at 41 to start his own firm Cole, Washington and Reed, which had spent 22 years working almost exclusively in cases that no one else wanted because the clients couldn't pay and the stakes were too high and the path to victory was too narrow. He had worked on wrongful convictions, on voting access litigation, on police brutality settlements in cities that had hoped quiet money would produce quiet people. He had been profiled in 3 law reviews and 2 national magazines. He had received the American Bar Association's Pro Bono Publico Award in 2019. He had been nominated for and declined 3 federal judgeships because he believed the cases he could handle as a private attorney would matter more in the long run than any docket he could manage from a bench. The Honorary Doctorate of Law from Lakewood University was the first formal recognition he had accepted from an academic institution in 30 years. He accepted it because the letter from the university president had included a paragraph about the institution's commitment to expanding its civil rights curriculum and had asked if he would be willing to speak with the law faculty about the LDF's litigation strategy in the months after the ceremony. That sentence, the ask that came after the recognition, told him the honor was being offered in the spirit he required it to be offered. He had said yes. He had arrived in Lakewood the previous evening. He had stayed at a modest hotel 2 miles from campus. Not from necessity. The university had offered accommodations, but from habit. He had eaten dinner alone with a book. He had reviewed the commencement remarks he had been asked to deliver. He had gone to sleep at 10:30 p.m. and woken at 5:30 a.m., feeling the way he felt before things that mattered. The doctoral regalia had been delivered to his hotel room the previous afternoon, the full ceremonial package, Lakewood's deep blue and gold, with the specific trim and hood configuration of a doctorate honoris causa, different in cut and color from the student regalia in ways that anyone familiar with academic ceremony would recognize instantly. He dressed in it over his suit at 9 a.m. He stood in front of the mirror for a moment. Then he picked up the printed commencement program, which had his photograph on its cover beneath the heading 2024 Honorary Degree Recipient, which was itself printed in 24-point type, and drove to campus. He arrived at the faculty staging area at 9:41 a.m. He was greeted by the commencement coordinator, signed into the credential table, was given a staging lanyard in addition to his regalia, and was introduced to the broadcast team, which asked if they could document his preparation for a segment to air during the pre-ceremony build-up. He had agreed. The camera had been with him for 6 minutes when Paul Greer appeared. Greer had been on a 3rd pass of the staging area. It was his 3rd circuit of the morning. He had identified 2 individuals earlier who had claimed faculty credentials that he had been unable to verify from memory and had let them proceed only when a commencement coordinator had intervened. He was in the particular mental state of someone who had decided the day was going to be a day where he found something and was looking for whatever would confirm the decision. He saw Marcus. He saw the doctoral regalia. He saw a black man of a certain age in formal academic dress, and he processed what he saw the way he had processed the same visual input 11 documented times before, with suspicion rather than recognition. He did not look at the lanyard. He did not look at the credential table 2 feet away. He did not look at the broadcast camera or the cameraman standing beside Marcus, which should have raised the obvious question of why a cameraman was documenting a person in the faculty staging area if that person was not supposed to be there. He walked directly to Marcus. "Sir, you need to come with me right now. You're not supposed to be in this area." Marcus looked at him. He did not look startled. He looked at the badge 6614, visible at chest height, and at the body cam mounted beside it. He looked at the broadcast camera to his left, whose operator had turned it toward Greer the moment Greer had spoken. He said, "I'm supposed to be exactly here. I've had 3 reports about an unauthorized individual in the faculty staging area." "That's you." Marcus held up the printed commencement program. He held it at the height where both Greer's body cam and the broadcast camera could read it. His own photograph was on the front. The text beneath the photograph read, 2024 Honorary Degree Recipient, Marcus Emmanuel Cole, J.D. "I have a program in my hand with my name on it," Marcus said. "Names on programs don't mean access to restricted zones. Turn around and walk with me. I am not going to miss this ceremony." Greer stepped forward. He reached for Marcus's arm. Marcus did not pull away. He remained completely still and said, with the precise, deliberate enunciation he used when he wanted a court reporter to catch every word, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. In approximately 17 minutes, the president of this university is going to hand me a Doctorate of Law degree at that podium. And after that, every camera in this stadium is going to capture what you just did on the worst possible day you will ever have in law enforcement." Greer's hand tightened on Marcus's arm. He reached for his handcuffs with his right hand. The broadcast camera operator, a 29-year-old named James Fortunato, who had been working university events for 3 years and who understood with complete clarity what he was watching, did not lower his camera. He adjusted his angle to capture both Marcus's face and Greer's badge number simultaneously. The commencement coordinator, a woman named Priya Sharma who had been at the credential table 8 feet away and had watched the entire exchange, walked toward them. She was moving quickly but not running. She said, "Officer, stop. That is Mr. Cole. He is our honorary degree recipient. His credentials are at the table right behind you." Greer did not stop. He had the handcuffs in his right hand and Marcus's left arm in his left, and the specific momentum of someone who had committed to an action and was completing it, because stopping would require acknowledging that starting had been wrong. The handcuffs clicked closed around Marcus's left wrist. The sound was captured on Greer's body cam, on the broadcast camera, and on the phone of a graduating student's parent in the 3rd row of the nearby seating section who had been watching the commotion with his phone raised for the past 90 seconds. Marcus looked at the handcuff on his wrist. He looked at Greer. His expression had not changed, not from the first moment, not through the program being ignored, not through the arm being grabbed, not now. He said, "I want your supervisor here immediately. I want this credential table's documentation photographed before anyone touches it. And I want the broadcast director to confirm that this camera has been running continuously for the last 7 minutes." James Fortunato said, from behind the camera, "Continuously since 9:41. Priya Sharma had her phone in her hand and was already calling. In the stadium, the ceremony had not yet begun. 4,200 students were in their seats. Their families were in the stands. The live stream had 31,000 viewers. The 2 stadium cameras were running. The pre-ceremony broadcast segment, the one that had been documenting Marcus Cole's preparation for the honorary degree ceremony, was being watched in the press box, in the broadcast truck, and on the screens of viewers who had tuned in early. At 10:09 a.m., the broadcast director in the truck switched the pre-ceremony feed from the interior stadium shot to the exterior staging area camera. He did it because the exterior camera operator had flagged the situation. He did it because the feed had a person in doctoral regalia and handcuffs and a security officer standing over them and a commencement coordinator on her phone, and he understood, as a broadcast professional, that this was the story. 31,000 people watched it happen live. Lakewood University's Director of Campus Safety, Dr. Renee Abra, arrived at the staging area at 10:14 a.m. She had been in the stadium's administrative box when her phone had produced 3 simultaneous notifications: Priya Sharma's call, a text from the university president's office, and an alert from the broadcast director's team. She had left the box before the 3rd notification finished loading. She walked into the staging area and saw Marcus Cole standing with one handcuff on his left wrist and Greer standing beside him and a broadcast camera pointed at both of them, and a cluster of commencement staff forming a perimeter of visible distress around the scene. She looked at the credential table. She saw Marcus's documentation laid out exactly where it had been placed at 9:41 a.m. The lanyard, the signed authorization from the university president's office, the honorary degree program with his photograph on the cover. She looked at Greer. She said, "Remove those handcuffs. Right now." "Ma'am, this individual." "Remove them." Greer removed them. He worked the key into the left cuff. It opened. Marcus brought his arm forward. He did not rub his wrist. He did not look at Greer. He looked at Dr. Abra and said, "Thank you. I'd like to take my position in the processional line now, if there's time." Dr. Abra looked at the time. It was 10:15 a.m. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 10:30. She said, "There's time. Priya will take you." She turned to Greer. "Badge. You're done for the day." Greer unclipped his badge. He placed it in her outstretched hand. The credential lanyard followed. He walked out of the staging area and did not return. At 10:31 a.m., Lakewood University's 147th commencement ceremony began. At 10:47 a.m., the university president took the podium and announced the honorary degree. At 10:49 a.m., Marcus Emmanuel Cole walked across the stage at Harrington Stadium and received his Doctorate of Law. The applause from 4,200 students and their families lasted 43 seconds. The livestream recorded all of it. The university's vendor review opened within 24 hours. The investigation was completed in 13 days, assisted by the fact that the available evidence was not ambiguous in any dimension. The broadcast footage captured the full interaction from multiple angles. Greer's body cam captured his approach, and the credential table he had ignored 2 feet behind him. And the commencement program with Marcus's photograph on the cover had been photographed and time-stamped by the broadcast camera at 10:07 a.m. before Greer arrived, making the documents. Authenticity and presence irrefutable. Greer's complaint history was reviewed in full for the first time in 4 years. 11 complaints, 8 from Black individuals at university events. All closed without escalation. The Vendor Relations Office's folder, the one that had received and filed each complaint in sequence, was reviewed by the university's legal team and produced a finding that the team's senior counsel described in her written memo as a systemic failure of the vendor review process that permitted a documented pattern of discriminatory conduct to continue unaddressed through 11 documented episodes, culminating in the handcuffing of the institution's honorary degree recipient on its commencement stage, captured in real time by a broadcast camera in front of 31,000 viewers. Greer's contract was terminated within 30 days. The security vendor's contract with the university was reviewed and not renewed. Greer applied to 2 subsequent event security contracts in the region. Both background checks returned the broadcast footage and the complaint history. Neither contract was offered. He found work in a private warehouse in an adjacent county. His name returns 410,000 search results. The first result is the 31-second clip from the ceremony broadcast that shows the handcuffs going on, viewed 19 million times. The second is the university's public statement. The third is a Harvard Law Review piece titled "Credentialed and Handcuffed: When Security Theater Meets Honorary Doctrine." The civil lawsuit was filed by Marcus Cole as a private individual through a Chicago civil rights firm. The complaint named Greer personally and the security vendor institutionally. It alleged racial discrimination, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and institutional negligence. The last count grounded specifically in the vendor's documented failure to act on 11 complaints over 4 years, which the lawsuit characterized as deliberate indifference to a pattern of racially discriminatory enforcement. The complaint further named Lakewood University as a secondary defendant for its Vendor Relations Office's role in receiving and filing complaints without review. The university engaged separately with Marcus before the lawsuit moved to trial. It settled its portion within 60 days of being served. The vendor settled 4 months later. Total settlement, $3.6 million. The university's portion was $1.4 million, reflecting the institutional failure of its complaint review process. The vendor contributed $1.7 million, reflecting the systemic failure to address 11 complaints over 4 years. Greer's personal liability was assessed at $500,000, attached to his assets after the court found his conduct comprehensively outside authorized security activity given the documented credential he had failed to verify. Marcus Cole directed the entirety of the settlement into 4 allocations, announced at a press conference held on the Lakewood University campus, in Harrington Stadium, at the podium where he had received his degree. $1.2 million established the Cole Access and Equity Fund at the university's law school, providing full scholarships to first-generation law students from historically underrepresented backgrounds with a specific focus on students committed to civil rights practice. The first cohort of 6 Cole scholars enrolled the following academic year. $900,000 went to the Lawyers' Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which had provided legal support to communities experiencing discriminatory public access enforcement for decades, and which had been advocating for expanded civil remedies in this area without sufficient resources to fully pursue the caseload. $800,000 established a vendor accountability program at 10 universities across the Midwest, a shared protocol requiring all event security contractors to implement credential verification training, complaint tracking visible to institutional leadership, and automatic contract review when any officer accumulated 3 or more unresolved complaints within an 18-month window. The program was developed in consultation with university legal offices and named the Harrington Protocol after the stadium where the incident had occurred. $700,000 went to the National Employment Law Project's campaign for expanded civil liability for discriminatory security enforcement, which had been pursuing legislative reform in 7 states, and which received, with Marcus's contribution, the funding to move 3 of those state campaigns from advocacy to active legislative engagement. The Illinois Academic Event Security Accountability Act, modeled on the Harrington Protocol and introduced by 2 state legislators who had watched the ceremony live stream, required all Illinois universities using contracted event security to implement public-facing complaint tracking, mandatory credential verification training, and annual reports to the state's Higher Education Board on security contractor complaint resolution rates. The act passed both chambers and was signed into law at a ceremony Marcus attended as a private citizen. He stood in the back of the room. He did not speak. He watched the governor sign the bill and nodded once when the pen left the paper. Marcus Cole returned to his law firm in Chicago. He continued taking the cases no one else wanted at rates no one else would work for. He taught a seminar at Lakewood's law school the following spring, Civil Rights Litigation, Strategy, and Limits, to an enrollment of 23 students that included 4 Cole scholars. He began the first class by placing the commencement program on the lectern in front of him. His photograph was still on the cover. He looked at it for a moment. Then he opened his briefing notes and began. Paul Greer was still working in the warehouse. His name appeared in the Illinois Academic Event Security Accountability Act's legislative record as the precipitating incident. It appeared in the Harrington Protocol's training documentation as Case Study 1. It appeared in the Harvard Law Review piece that every civil rights student in 3 states had been assigned to read. His name would continue working in law and policy long after he had stopped working in security. The doctoral regalia from the 2024 ceremony was in a garment bag in Marcus's Chicago office closet. He had not decided whether to keep it there or donate it somewhere. For now, it stayed. Some things you hold on to not because of what they represent, but because of what it cost to get them. If you believe a man who spent 30 years fighting for civil rights in courtrooms should be able to stand in a cap and gown without being handcuffed 17 minutes before receiving his degree, share this story with someone who needs to understand that 11 complaints without consequences is not a system failing. It is a system choosing. What accountability measures should universities require of their security vendors before one bad day becomes 19 million views? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you believe the complaint folder that was never opened twice should have been opened the second time, subscribe. We are not stopping until the pattern exposure comes before the handcuffs, not after.